Hello, everyone. We're the Metropolitan Opera Horns, and we're very excited to have the staff from Houghton Horns today. Thank you for joining, guys. Thank you for your time. And we're excited to explore more about your shop, what you have done in terms of outreach, education, horns, mouthpieces. How do you guys start in when and background and history? Like, what are some of those things you would like to share today?
Starting from the very beginning, I married Karen Swarthout. She was my best pal from college, and another horn player. We had kind of a cool adventure. As soon as we were married, we had a baby boy. That's Mark. And then before he was a year old, we took a job in Colombia, South America. We played in Cali, the third largest city. There, we did a little traveling. We had applied for a Rotary Foundation scholarship to study in Germany, and we were awarded that actually while we were still in Colombia. Studied with Michael Herzl for a year, and then times were tough. I think there was a recession going on. We came back to the U.S. And moved to Texas because there was promise of some studio recording, and we thought, well, maybe we could play with the Dallas Symphony. That didn't work out, but we did find out that we could teach in Texas. There were great music programs in the state. We found that you can teach 40, 50 students a week. And I actually taught an average of 60 students a week for over 20 years. While I was doing that, one of the band directors I taught for asked if I could clean some of his horns, and sure, I knew how to clean my horns. So I started by cleaning 3 horns for North Oaks Middle School down here about 10 miles from the shop. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I didn't make enough mistakes. And the thing with repairs, unlike playing live performances, is if you make a mistake, you can go back and fix it. It gave me confidence to go ahead. Next thing I know, I was asking all the other band directors I taught for it, do you have any broken horns, anything I can clean for you? And by that time, I had 2 kids to feed, and pretty soon we had a third one on the way. So I was motivated to provide for my family.
Do any of the other children play horn besides Mark?
Both our daughters, Rebecca and Sarah, also studied with us. It's a unique dynamic when you're teaching your own kid because they don't need to listen to you. It turned out Mark did better with Karen, and my 2 daughters did better studying with me. So we were very busy through the 80s and 90s, just raising our kids. But at the same time, I was teaching in 8 or 10 schools a week, going from school to school, teaching private horn studio. And that gave me access to the band halls. Some weeks it would be a broken euphonium or a tuba. I've repaired everything from timpani to piccolo trumpets. But horn is my thing, and I really enjoy, and working on horns is really rewarding for me. Got to the place where I, not just doing the basic repairs, but I could take a poorly playing horn and make it play actually its very best, and the directors recognize that. Eventually, after doing that for 10 or 15 years, some professional players and university students started giving me their work. It started very slow. We just kept at it. And in Texas, because of the strong school band programs, we continue to grow.
Do you remember the first time you cut a bell?
That Karen loves to tell this story, so I'll let her tell it.
You were holding a saw, and you came in and said, I'm going to cut a bell for the first time. And I was so horrified, I just had to leave the house. I was just...
She had a nightmare, I think.
It was horrible, but it worked out fine.
What kind of a saw did you use? Just like what you had in the garage?
The very first time I used a jeweler's saw, which is a very thin blade, a very tiny, like a coping saw blade, and it worked, but it wasn't the best choice. Nowadays we use razor saw blades that we get from X-Acto. I've probably cut 300-400 bells. I haven't counted over the years, but we've done it a lot. And that every one is a little bit different. Even new bells have different tendencies, and then a lot of times we'll restore an old 8D or even an old Geyer horn. The metal can be thin on one side and almost factory thick on the other side. So there's unique properties, and you just like playing horn, you adjust on the fly.
It's pretty amazing because I think we all feel like, okay, we could do some very minor horn repair work, but to do it into such a massive scale and size that you guys are doing is quite another thing. Joe, I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about your story with you had a horn repaired. I think you had a little story there.
Well, it wasn't. I didn't send it to you guys for repair. Do you know a guy named Wayne Horst?
Yep.
All right, you've probably seen a lot of horns from him.
Yeah, we helped him sell a number of horns over the years.
We got a call one day from Wayne saying that he was playing his old guy horn now, and he had this horn that he thought I would like, and that you were fixing it up. And so I guess I got in touch with you then, and you sent it to me. I think you said I could hold on to it for 2 weeks to decide. And in addition to being a great horn, it was so beautiful. And honest to God, I called you after 45 minutes. Said, I'm buying this horn. And
Yeah,
Rosen Cavalier the last time I played it.
I get to work on some of these, great old 8Ds. I've worked on a number of genuine Crispas, Horner, and Bendler models. But to take an old horn like that is a legendary instrument, and then make it
400,000.
Yeah, it's so fun and so rewarding to be able to do that, and I'm very proud of that. I think
it's just beautiful work.
Thank you.
I don't know what it looked like before, but whatever you did, I mean, the horn was beautiful.
We just polish them.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Just with regards to repair and how you got into it, I would assume it was a lot of trial and error, but what kind of resources did you have to help you figure things out?
I am mostly self-taught. I do remember in college, the local music store, Whitaker Music in Long Beach, California, and I hung out at the repair shop a few times, not a lot. Also, Bob and Mark Atkinson had their shop in Hollywood at the time. They worked on all the 8Ds for the studio players. And I had my horn serviced, and I think I had valves rebuilt by them. So I looked up to those guys and thought, boy, this stuff is really cool. Also have my dad was an engineer, and I actually started an engineering degree, double degree program when I was doing my undergrad. So I have kind of hands-on skills. I like to make things all the time. And I just, when I did those first 3 cleanings, I thought, wow, this combines skills that I have and things that I like to do, music, the horn, hands-on. I did a lot of woodworking, but I never worked with metal. So there was a learning curve. But it turns out some of the techniques do cross over, and I just enjoyed it. So it just felt like I'm supposed to do this, and I guess it worked out. But and having said that, there's a lot of late nights, and there's a lot of all-nighters I did with our school customers to take a batch of beat up horns and get them back to them during the summertime. And Texas band programs start on August 1st. And sometimes they don't send the horns in until June 15th, and you have 600 horns to work on over the space of a month and a half, and there's some pressure. But again, I was working on something that I enjoyed. It was stressful and long hours, but I was also providing for my family. I had to do it, but it also created what we are now.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys were in a place where there was a huge market, a huge industry, right, of music programs and an incredible amount of students. But it sounds like there was a very big need of what you started to do.
The Texas band programs, people have heard about them. But the background is they were started in the late 1800s by Czech and German immigrants that had brass bands back in the old country.
So, well, thanks for that, Dennis. That was great. So, that was great to hear how you started and the importance of, like having people like you at the Houghton Horns that, are willing to work with our instruments. Because if it wasn't because of that, then we wouldn't be able to make music properly, right? Um, Product development and design, and maybe Derek can talk us about that.
Oh, sure. I'd be happy to. I've been part of the business since 2012, and I've been an owner of the business for the last 5 years. And one of the things I've been involved with has been our product development. It's mostly because we didn't want to just be a retailer of instruments. We really see ourselves as more than just a local music store where you can come buy some oils, maybe see some French horns and things like that. We want to be more. We want to contribute to the community and to the base of knowledge that exists about our instruments. As far as our products, we started off with the Houghton Mouthpieces. So myself and Mark, we partnered with Dave Hauser to design 3 models of mouthpieces, our H1, H2, and H3 models. We wanted to go for mouthpieces that were middle of the road, so nothing extremely deep, nothing with huge bores, nothing with super tiny bores, all middle range mouthpieces that would be good for most people. And part of that, I sometimes hear people ask, why don't you offer more mouthpieces? They want to come and see like 25 different mouthpieces. But the thing is that can you even try that many fairly? And what's the point in the things that most people aren't really going to need? So by looking at the mouthpieces in our range, you already know that you're not going too far off to one end or the other. But those mouthpieces were extremely successful for us. We've sold thousands of those mouthpieces at this point. They've been more popular than we could have ever imagined that they would be.
Are the H1, 2, and 3 based on different styles of mouthpieces? So the difference between 1, 2, and 3 are style. For example, like loosely based on what Giardinelli used to make or Schilke. What are the differences between 1, 2, and 3?
1, 2, and 3 are all bowl-shaped mouthpieces. The 3 is slightly more V-shaped than the H1 and H2, but all 3 count as bowl-shaped mouthpieces. The H3 was originally based on the black leather Farkas mouthpiece, which was made in the 1960s. Has nothing to do with the Houghton Farkas. This is a completely different thing. Based on if you read Nancy Fackel's book on Farkas, you can read the story about the black leather Farkas mouthpiece, where he and Schilke would get together and just like play around on a lathe and make mouthpieces. And the black leather Farkas mouthpiece was something that he personally made just by messing around with a lathe.
Derek, that was Nancy Fackel was my horn teacher in high school. And I remember when she was writing that book that you're talking about and seeing just the mounds of material that she had on Farkas. I had a few lessons with him, but I don't know anything about this mouthpiece that you're kind of talking about, the pre-Houghton, model that you're talking about. So it's all just very interesting to me to hear this.
Yeah, and that's it. Only a few of those mouthpieces were made. But with the help of my old horn professor, Dr. John Erickson at Arizona State University, he had a few of them available. So he sent them to me, and we were able to copy them, and that became the basis for the H3 design. I was originally introduced to them by my teacher at University of Minnesota, Herbert Winslow, and ever since then I've kind of been obsessed with that mouthpiece. The H1 and the H2 are shallower than the H3 with a larger bore. So for people who want something a little more free blowing, a little more heat in the sound, then the H1 and then the H2 are gonna, kind of help provide that.
I noticed on the website that you offer them in stainless steel as well as brass. And I know I'd be curious just to know if you can sort of give just a general overview of the difference in those two metals.
Stainless steel is harder than brass. Because of that, stainless steel responds a little quicker, and the articulation is just more immediate. Some people like that. Some people hate that. That just depends on the way you articulate and how hard and all of that. Stainless also to the player will sound a bit brighter. Brass will sound a bit more warm. I have tried both several times for people out in a hall. I play in the Amarillo Symphony, and I also play regularly with other orchestras. So a lot of times I'll stay after rehearsals and try things in the halls. No one can hear the difference in the hall. To the player, you will feel a difference, and you will swear that you hear a difference.
Yeah, that's true. Just a question concerning, how do you help younger players find, the right mouthpiece, either to completely, be a beginner, or maybe, like a high school level student. How do you kind of help them find the right mouthpiece? And also, could you speak a little bit about the horn, the Varus horn that you have developed?
So I just shared my screen with a diagram of a mouthpiece here. There are lots of different aspects to a mouthpiece, but most people don't need to be concerned with most of them. For a younger student, the very first thing you need to get right is the rim. And the rim is a very personal choice. A lot of times I get really disappointed when I see people buying and trying a mouthpiece just because their teacher plays it or a famous player plays it, and so on. If you don't have the lips of your teacher, if you don't have the lips of that famous player, if you don't have the teeth of that famous player, then that rim, and setup is not necessarily going to work for you.
Lip transplants.
Yeah. In general, the larger your lips, the larger the inner diameter, the smaller and thinner your lips, the smaller the inner diameter. And by large and small, I'm referring to the amount of red that you see at rest position. So some people, you see very little red on the lips. Some you see a lot of red when they're just, sitting around resting. Other than that, you try horns and mouthpieces with your eye on the sound that you want to create. I tell this to people all the time. So a lot of times people come in to try a horn, and I ask them, who's your favorite player? Whose sound do you admire the most? Like, what do you want to sound like? And I believe the first step to picking the right horn and picking the right mouthpiece is being able to, and here I'm not talking about sixth graders, I'm talking about high school seniors, college students, things like that. You need to be able to answer that question. And then when you try your mouthpieces, when you try your equipment, you can know what your goal is, aside from clear sound, clear articulation, things like that. Do you really like Myron Bloom sound? Well, then you need to pick equipment that's going to go more towards that. Do you, really like David Cooper's sound? Well, then, as you're trying equipment, you need to have that sound in your head and go more towards things that will help you sound like that. As far as our Varus horns are concerned, we wanted to make an affordable horn. That's how the project started. The Varus horns are made in China, and there are lots of different music shops who will go, to a show like a Music China in Shanghai, just see what's out there, and they're like, oh, that horn seems good enough. I'm just going to put my store brand name on it and sell that horn with the store brand. That is not what we did. We designed the horns in-house. So Dennis literally sat down and made the prototypes. So the horns are based off of Dennis's horn designs with input from all of us. And then we found a manufacturing partner who could make those horns up to our standards. One of the partners we work with in China is the ones that make our Varus 5 and our Varus K models. It's a small workshop with fewer than 10 people working there. So it's It's a handmade Chinese horn. And the workshop's just like a workshop that you would find in any other country. I've been there myself. And we continue to work with them to improve the horns.
For me, it seems like, with my students who want to buy, a new horn, it's always like, it seems like you can just say, okay, there's, you can buy a used instrument like a Con AD or something, maybe, a Yamaha around the $3,000 range. It seems like there's just not that much product between about $3,000 and $10,000 for students. So you may have like a very, a successful college student who maybe could spend about $4,000 and wants their own new horn. Is this something that would fall into that price point, or?
Yes, it would. Our Veris 5 models currently sell for $34.95. The Veris K model sells for $42.50, and our Veris 7 model sells for $52.50. So they're all in that middle price point. It's a difficult price point to have horns in because a lot of times, if you're utilizing manufacturing in the West and you want to make it to a high quality, the price point is just going to be higher. There's no way around that. And it's also, if you use manufacturing outside of the West, it's hard to find manufacturing that's up to high quality and high standards. So that's when you get the horns that you find on eBay for $600-$700.
Yeah, those. Yeah, no thanks for those. But is there a way that students that are not in Texas could try these horns?
We go to many workshops and symposiums. Normally, honestly, I don't know when those will be happening again. And even when they start happening, frankly, due to the virus, we're going to have to really consider how to let people try mouthpieces and horns in a safe manner. So I don't know when going to shows again is going to be a big thing. We're trying to let the entire country know about these horns.
Just a really, really quick summation of the difference between the three horns, since you can't do any kind of presentations.
Okay, so the Veris 5 and 5G are most popular horns in the range. They're the ones that are $34.95 for the detachable bell model, with the fixed bell model being a few hundred less. Those horns are a little heavier. They have thicker metal, which we use to try to help a little bit with dent resistance, but it also helps with the projection of the horn as well. So it carries pretty well into a hall. We quality check every single horn. The Veris K is a Knopf wrap horn, which is a little lighter. So the gauge of metal that we use is thinner. That horn responds a little more easily, and it's a bit easier to play due to the loss in weight and the difference in wrap. But I found it's about 50-50 when people try the K and the 5 as to what horn people like the most. Some people appreciate that lighter horn, it's more responsive. Some people appreciate the heavier horn with the more muscular sound. The Veris 7 model is a Gyre wrap horn. It's a Gyre wrap horn, but it's got a bit of a unique wrap because it's a very compact Gyre style horn. So it's not quite as unwieldy to play as some of the Gyre style horns with a larger circle.
Karen! So can you give us a little bit about your background, like how you chose horn? And I love that you and Dennis got together and then have really made this quite an amazing service organization.
So Dennis and I actually went to high school together, and I was his first horn teacher. So I've been a private horn teacher for about 40 years. I did start on the clarinet in 7th grade because I had a tremendous crush on the general music teacher, and I had to get into that band somehow the next year. So my uncle had an old metal clarinet. So my mom said, okay, you can use this. I said, fine, whatever it takes. So I got into the band and was terrible on the clarinet, last year clarinet. And then one day he said, does anyone want to try to play the French horn? We need another French horn player. And my hand shot up the first. So I think he chose me, thankfully. But I came back after school and he handed me the horn and a book and said, there you go. So I had no instruction at all. And because of that, I had a lot of problems at first. Like I had what you would call a opposite embouchure or reverse embouchure, to where I was playing like 2/3 on the bottom lip. And I did okay. But again, I had no instruction. I started on a single F horn. And when I went to high school, they handed me a double, a con 8D, and I had no idea what the trigger was about. So I continued to play on the F horn through 11th grade. 11th grade, my parents finally decided, oh, she probably needs to have a lesson or two. So I studied with a man named Ed Jackson, and he actually started me on the path as far as fixing things. First thing we did was change the embouchure, and then his first question was, why are you not using the trigger? And I said, I don't know what that thing is, and furthermore, I don't think I need it. I'm doing just fine, thank you very much. So I was a little stubborn about it, but eventually, of course, I learned, and it was like, wow, the high notes are a lot easier now. So I went on to study at Cal State Long Beach, and Dennis and I were both there. We studied with Fred Fox and Jim Decker. And then he told you a little bit about our early married life, playing in various orchestras. But anyway, now I have a very active private studio. I think I teach about 40 a week. And I also do a lot of master classes and clinics with a colleague of mine, Janet Nye, where we presented clinics all over the country, actually. So my passion is teaching. I'm very committed to that. And because of that, the company is the same way. We have an educational outreach, and we're very passionate about giving back to the horn community.
Well, I mean, your website is extraordinary in terms of what you offer under just the educational resources page. What kinds of things have you discovered with doing the educational outreach and services you provide that you have found particularly interesting? And what have you are useful for teachers in general? And what kinds of things have you found are the most helpful for students?
We're fortunate to be in an area where there are steroid ban programs, and just about everybody takes lessons. So I've been able to kind of hone my skills over the past 30 years here. When I went to college, I knew one concerto. I knew the first movement of Mozart 3, no excerpts. I mean, I didn't even know what excerpts were. So nowadays, my seniors are playing things that I wouldn't have even dreamed of playing in college. And so the level has just, it's incredible. But I am very determined to make sure kids start out correctly because of the problems that I went through. I think even though it was painful at the time to go through it, it made me a better teacher. It made me the teacher that I am today. So I'm thankful for that.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
Good, thanks. This is, let me just say, it's just a real honor and a pleasure that you guys thought of us, and we just feel really, this is an incredible opportunity for us. So thank you for making time for us and recognizing us, and we're thrilled to be here.
I mean, it's a mutual feeling for us. First of all, this allows our horn section to get together a little bit every week, which is a nice thing. And then second of all, I mean, I think I speak on behalf of everybody. We're all learning so much about everybody that we're talking to. We kind of get into our own little bubble of, okay, playing operas and teaching our own students and stuff. So doing this is kind of nice to get out of the pit and out into the world and talk to people. Also, we have an honorary Texan who retired a few years ago, Michelle Baker. Mm-hmm. And, when you were talking about using the F horn, all I kept thinking about was Michelle, because she is such a such a great supporter of using the F horn as long as possible. And I also feel that it's a really great way to develop your sound and your tone production. But Mark, I really wanted to talk to you because I know you're working really hard on something called TMEA, which maybe you could just describe what that is for people that are listening, that are international, that may not know what the MEA type situation is here in the States.
Sure. So TMEA stands for Texas
Music Educators Association.
Music Educators Association, sorry. And it is the sort of overarching organization that manages all of the Texas music programs. And it is quite an impressive apparatus, basically. It's very well organized. It's got all of it's based on, it's a merit-based system whereby there's a lot of auditions, and it's sort of very top-down. I benefited just personally from an audition standpoint at a very young age, because it's very competitive, and they're screened auditions from I guess, like middle school.
Yeah, I did this in Illinois. I don't know if we could all raise our hands if we did something similar. And I don't know if you did. No, Karen, Erik, you didn't do it. Wow, kind of, Hugo. So what is it that you're doing in terms of you're recording the excerpts? Is that correct? What they're asking for, or?
Yeah, so every year there are different etudes that are selected. They're usually out of a book like Kling or Gallet, and it kind of varies. But since 2013, we have been producing a video series in which I play the etude. It's basically like a mini masterclass. I give some basic, brief, advice, pointers, like tips about how to maybe perform it better. And the whole idea was that we would try and sort of reach out and give back and provide some sort of educational resource to mostly kids that are maybe in rural parts of the state that don't have a teacher or never had a teacher or what have you. So I think it's a really important thing that we do. We've been doing it since 2013, and sometimes, it's a big project. It's our biggest multimedia project that we do on a yearly basis. And it has a lot of reach. We have hundreds of thousands of views on each video. We recently added trumpet and trombone videos as well. And actually, John Romero, your colleague in the Met, is doing the trombone videos, which is awesome. We're just thrilled about that. We're actually thinking about adding more to come. We'll see how that works.
Could you mention where you could find this on YouTube?
Sure. This is on our YouTube channel.
YouTube.com/Houghton Horns.
And a lot of these also get posted on our other social media outlets when they happen. But we try and keep it fun and interesting. There's the last couple of years there've been a blooper reel, which is, keeps it light and funny. We don't want to be too stuffed shirt about everything. It's a big project. It's always like a little bit stressful to plan, and we don't really see much revenue out of it, but we know that we're doing it to reach people and to sort of give back. And so we get a lot of good feedback, a lot of positive feedback about it. So we'll continue to do it. Basically, just with the goal of providing resources for these young players.
That's really incredible. I've tried recording, like you said, some Kopráš etudes, and it's a lot of work.
So what this is it senses the difference. It senses the pressure difference. This machine is putting out a certain PSI, and it's not high. It's 2 or 3 pounds per square inch, maybe. But I'm going to plug it into this horn. You can maybe come across the top. And just as a quick check, for instance, this is an older King Crispa model, and I'm taking the pressure hose, and I'm going to plug the other end of first valve, and then we're taking a look back at the machine. We're reading about a 4 or 3.3 maybe. That's sensing the difference between the pressure input into the horn and what it's losing. So as an older horn, this is it's quite leaky. Actually, we'd recommend a valve rebuild on this one, but it gives us options, and it gives us a calibration, a number that we can use to decide if a horn is playing its best. We get different consignment horns and different pre-owned horns all the time. It gives us a way to evaluate it and actually assign a value. Does this meet our standards or not? And
FYI, that value should be 2 or under, ideally.
Ideally. Right? And most new production horns in this country, we've seen readings from some of the factories as high as 2s for a brand new horn. But we, as much as possible, we want to see that reading at 0 or maybe 0.1 or 2.
I see.
And that would be an absolutely tight horn with no leaks. And we have ways of checking, several different ways of checking a horn into the valve section, down the main tuning slide, into the mouth pipe. We make several checks. We check about 12 different things when we measure the compression on a horn, including taking it. This is actually a pool plug for use in swimming pools. And we put it in the bell. We can tighten it in and actually seal off the bell. That allows us to check compression down the main tuning slide and actually through the entire horn. Sometimes we get older horns that have little cracks or splits. Sometimes you see it in the bell tail. Other times you see one of the joints, one of the solder joints will pull loose or develop a crack or pinhole. And all of that stuff is important. The ideal horn is airtight from beginning to end. But there's a lot of square inches of metal and a lot of places where there could be problems. In general, it's pretty straightforward, but it seems like every week I find something new that I didn't know or didn't realize it was quite that important. And suddenly this horn plays better than ever. So again, it's rewarding and it's always challenging. There's always something new.
This is so interesting. When we started this series, to see into your shop and to see how you're working on all this stuff and how
it's a horrible mess.
That doesn't look like a mess to me at all. You should come over where I am.
Yeah,
It's a mess.
It's just so cool. I mean, this is really.
It's because we're really creative people. We don't have time.
That's why. Yeah. I'm sure there's a quote in there somewhere about being creative and having a messy environment, but yours looks very organized. So I think it's awesome.
A few years ago, we decided to invest in a bias machine. Bias stands for Brass Instrument Analysis System. And we did this around the time we started the Varus line. And that was to used as a tool to help us improve the design of the horns and to check the horns as they were coming in to make sure that they were all consistent in meeting our quality standards. Dennis and myself, actually last summer, we went to Vienna and we got to train at a university there with the professor who created the system and just learn more about musical instrument acoustics and using the machine and things like that. So that was a great experience, and also got to see Vienna, which wasn't terrible. Right now, we're actually we're starting a project to actually put the readings from the bias machine online. And we've actually already taken them and we're slowly getting them up on our different horns. This is part of our initiative to improve our online shopping experience even more, because to be realistic, people come from around the country to buy horns from us. We get people flying in from across the country all of the time. And that's probably not going to be happening anytime soon. So we want to provide more information about each horn to the customer. So this is an example of a product listing where we've gotten a bunch of things up. For example, there is a review video here with a playing sample so people can hear what the horn sounds like. And we also have our bias charts here. So if I click here, we can see the intonation analysis chart here. And it's, this is for the B flat side of the horn that I have right here. And we can see how the intonation on each horn is. So you can have confidence that you're buying a horn with good intonation before you get it. As you see, high C here is 19 cents sharp, but that happens pretty regularly on horns. You can see the high A open. This is the open B flat horn. It's about 6 cents flat here. High G is about 2 cents flat. F is about 6 cents sharp. In general, this is good intonation. There are a lot of horns that don't have numbers quite this close to zero. Third space C here is 5 cents sharp. So we have charts like that, so you can have confidence in the intonation of a particular horn. And I'm actually working on a few different videos, but one video on explaining the charts and the information here. This pulse response chart, this is actually a representation of the physical properties of the horn. So this drop here is the beginning of the horn where the mouthpiece starts. This drop here is the end of the bell. So this line along here is the horn. And if there are any sharp dips or peaks here, then there's something wrong with the bore of the horn. Like there's some piece of metal sticking into it, or two tubes were not connected well in a ferrule. So the smoother this line is, basically the smoother the inside of the horn is. And yeah, there are a few dips and things here, but this is a good reading. And then our acoustical impedance chart here. So this is a representation of how slotty the horn will feel. The higher the peaks here, it's basically a representation of the amount of energy in each note. If the peaks are higher, they're more slotty. And as you can tell, as we get higher into the register, the peaks, fall down. It's harder to be accurate in the high register because the slots, the peaks are not quite as defined. And when you get here, this is when you just get into like the slide whistle territory of the horn. But yeah, so we're doing this to all of the horns that we carry. And we're also, in addition to these charts on the used horns, we're putting up the compression test readings as well. Everyone will be able to see how the compression rates on a particular horn. Now, none of this is a replacement for trying the horn yourself, but hopefully with all of this information here, it will help you to figure out what horn you really want to have delivered to you and try out.
The player can stop with confidence now too, because you can see, like for the intonation, for example, that you showed, you're buying an instrument of quality as it measures out scientifically. I mean, the numbers don't lie, right?
Right. Although sometimes when I've shown people these readings in their own horns, they don't like the results.
It's a double-edged sword.
And sometimes I've done a talk about the bias system at different universities. There was one university I visited, and someone had an older horn there, and they volunteered to have their horn measured, and the results were just like awful, like way off the chart. And
it was really leaky.
Yeah, like you've just learned how to deal with the horn.
Yeah,
but that's what we're trying to do here. And just a little plug here on all of our new horns, we're offering free shipping and free returns. So that means you can have a horn sent to you, and if you don't like it, we'll pay your return shipping. So that way you can have even more confidence in trying a horn.
That's amazing. I know a lot of students who will and should take advantage of that, because that's kind of unheard of. So that's a great, I don't know if we could just say it one more time, that if anybody's interested in trying any of the horns on your website, besides seeing all the information that's on there, free shipping and free returns. That's great.
Are you guys shipping out presently, or are you waiting till the whole pandemic thing?
Oh no, we're shipping out as normal.
Oh, cool! So you can clean it when you get it back, and that's okay.
Yeah, we have extra precautions in place, but we're fully equipped with disinfectants and
That's great.
materials
That's
to make sure we send out horns safely, and that when we get them back, that they are safely put back, onto our wall.
This is so interesting, and what I have to come away with here is that you guys are so much more than just a shop. Individually meeting you all and hearing your stories. I mean, what's so apparent is your passion and how you've turned this into much more than a business. And yes, you do what so many stores do in terms of fixing and instruments, selling the instruments, selling the accessories for instruments. But with your passion, what you've given out to the community, of course, and you've producing horn players like Mark, but also in developing your own instruments and mouthpieces. It's just so comprehensive, and it's such a testament to how you give back to the community and to us as horn players, and the shop stands out nationally for that reason. And I kind of would like to hear about Karen's book as just an yet another arm of your passion for music and for horn playing in general. I'll just do a plug for you. I looked it up online here. There you go. All right. And of course, it's available at Houghton Horns. Is it published and available in other retailers as well?
No, right now the best place to get the book is from our website.
As far as developing the book, my colleague Janet Nye and I, she's a teacher as well, private teacher, and we've been teaching, over 20 years or 30 years in the area, and we both have this passion, the same passion for teaching and for helping others learn how to teach the horn more effectively. So we would go to our lessons with stacks of paper, handwritten material, grabbing material from here and there and everywhere. And we both had this brilliant idea, hey, why don't we write a book and put everything all in one place? So it took us about 3.5 years to complete the process. Before we even started writing the book, we actually gathered tons of method books and looked them over, made notes, and we plotted our own pedagogical chronology, like how we wanted to present the material. Like we synchronized the theory and the key signatures in the different areas of the book. So there was a lot of planning before we even sat down to write it. And a lot of late nights at IHOP, because she has small children, and sometimes the only time we could meet was very late at IHOP. They got to know us quite well. We noticed that there were basically 4 areas that were lacking in books for young players. One would be the low range. We didn't feel like the low range was introduced early enough. With our students, we actually have them playing down to low C within the first year. A lot of the method books don't even have a fingering chart that goes that low. But I think it's important to start a student off like I tell my kids, you're building a foundation of a house, and you start with the bottom and you build up. So it's very important, and that area was totally lacking in most method books. Also, lip slurs on the F horn, that I feel very important, or I feel that's very important, that kids can navigate those close intervals. And we couldn't find a whole lot of method books that incorporated lots of lip slurs. Also, the etudes, we felt like were kind of old-timey, and they weren't the songs in there weren't really engaging. And so we did a search on what was public domain, and we took a lot of those songs and used them, and we also wrote our own. Also, the last thing I think was the duets that we decided to include. I am a big believer in playing duets with students, even young students, because then they learn to be able to play independently. And it's also just a lot of fun. So we wanted to include those. Something that's kind of unique about our book is that we actually had some of our students write duets. We put it out there and said, you could submit your duet and we'll look it over. And there was some back and forth, as far as like taking out some clunky notes here and there or whatever. But there are duets in the book by 12-year-olds, by 16-year-olds, by 18-year-olds. So it's really cool. I'm really proud of that aspect too. As far as the way that it's set up, it's called Recipe for Success. And we decided to go with a cookbook theme, mainly because Janet and I love to eat. No, but we also, both of us, approach our horn playing and teaching in the same way that you would approach a balanced diet, as far as just different areas on the horn. The book is broken into 5 categories. It's range and flexibility, which is subtitled fruits and vegetables. And then breathing and tone, which is subtitled dairy, where we talk about the creamy tone on the horn. The third is technique, and that's the meat category, like Clark studies, scales, that kind of thing. And then the music category is subtitled grains. And then the 5th category is just for fun, and it's subtitled dessert. That's where you're going to find the duets and the fun games and stuff. I just did a project last week where I had all my online students build a hose horn. So I actually sent them a click track, and they have recorded a duet in our book. It's called Zoom Essen. It's actually a traditional hunting horn call. But they recorded it, and we're in the process of putting that together. So there will be a Houghton Horns horn studio hose horn ensemble soon to come. But we've had a lot of fun with that. It's not set up like lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. We wanted to make it more accessible and more free-flowing. So there are 3 different levels in each of those categories. But depending on your students, you can move throughout those levels as needed. And it's 260 pages, lots of what we call chef's notes, which would be to the teacher, like reminding them to, have their student play with a big sound, or to check their, embouchure or posture setting or whatever. Lots of illustrations. We hired a professional illustrator. It's just really a concise method book. It's got a lot of photos. We took photos of different players, and showing a good embouchure versus a bad embouchure, because I feel like that's really important to see the difference. And as far as posture, the same way. We have lots of photos. It's a little bit like the Farkas book in that regard. But anyway, we just wanted to make a book that was engaging and fresh and fun, and something that the kids could do a lot of it on their own, because has a lot of instruction to go.
Sounds like such a creative and an original idea for an introductory book and beyond. Obviously, for kids, I don't know anything that's like that exists. That's just an amazing project. If I could just jump in and call on Mark at this moment, because this week is Mother's Day, and here's your mom's written this book. She was your first teacher. Is there anything in there that you've been through the book, I'm sure, that rings a bell to your time studying with your mom growing up, and how it translated into your own success, some of these creative ideas?
Well, I definitely owe her a tremendous debt. She was really instrumental in my development as a player, and I knew I wanted to play horn at a certain point, and I realized that I had parents that were willing to share that gift with me, and they were. Now, as a parent myself, I understand now how much sacrifice that is and how difficult it can be, because I'm working with my own kids now, and it's tough, to make the time for them and to be patient when they don't want to listen to what you have to say about this or anything else. Now it's sort of come full circle. But yes, I mean, in the book, there's a lot of just real common sense information. I use the book now with some of my young students that I teach, and even some of my more advanced students have something to gain from it at certain times or from certain parts of the book. So I just can't say enough good things about the book. It was recently featured on Sarah Willis Horn Hangouts, and we've sold over 1,300 copies of the book. So
wow. That's awesome.
Success. And I think it just demonstrates that there was a real void in the market for anything like this. And so I'm very proud of my mom and of course her co-author Janet, who I've known for years, and they just did a tremendous job on this. I can't say enough.
Sweetie. Is there anything else that you guys don't do? Do you guys deliver pizzas as well? Or I'm just astounded by the breadth of everything that you're doing. It's amazing. It's a dynasty, and it's a wonderful resource. Maybe Mark, could you talk a little bit about the website? What it is exactly? Houghtonhorns.com, and there's several different YouTube channels, I think, or a YouTube channel.
Yes. So we're really proud of our website. It's taken thousands of dollars and thousands of hours to build, and it's like feeding the beast. You just really keep going with that. That sort of applies to a lot of our outlets and the YouTube channel, certainly. I'm sure all of you know, just for everyone who's watching, I used to play principal horn in the Fort Worth Symphony until 2014, and then I moved to Pittsburgh. So I played third horn in the Pittsburgh Symphony, and I also, among a couple other things, I'm part owner of the business. And just to be clear, Derek and my parents and myself are all shared ownership of the business. So we do a lot remotely because I'm not there most of the time, and so to be able to do that is really key, especially at this time. And I've been able to focus a little bit differently on the business. But part of my sort of role in the business has become managing a lot of the social media and YouTube channel stuff. And of course, I get a lot of help from other owners and staff with this, so I'm not going to take all the credit, certainly. It's basically not just an e-commerce site. We wanted to build a really comprehensive and very complete experience. Our YouTube channel, which is another big part of what we do, we've got now nearly 15,000 subscribers, and I believe approaching 120 videos, different unique videos. So channel topics include tutorials like stringing your horn, setting up your home practice studio, musical performances. We have a David Cooper recital on there, product features and reviews, instruments and accessories that we've reviewed, educational videos, our TMEA series, beginning horn FAQs.
If you have a question about anything related to French horn, you can find it with us. That's our ultimate goal there.
So just a quick look at this. You can see that we have a Houghton Horns education tab on our page under the About Us. And this is just educational resources for horn players. And you can see there's a lot is taken from Recipe for Success, but we can look at the Getting Started on the Horn. If you could just click on that, Derek, if you don't mind. So you get sort of an overview, and a lot of this is in Recipe for Success, but this is all published online for beginning students and teachers and band directors and folks who might just want a little extra inside info on how to get started. So this is just one example, but hopefully, the goal is to just build a bigger library of these sorts of resources.
And that's what makes you guys so much more than just a, repair and dealer kind of business, but you guys are just, a wealth of services and information. And again, serving the community locally and online. It's an amazing.
It's just a thing. We don't sell horns because we want to make money and it's the best way to make a living. There are other things we can sell that are more profitable. There are other things we could do that would take a little less work and that we would make more money. We sell horns and brass instruments because we're passionate about music. Really, we sell instruments to fund our habit.
Is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about that we may have skipped over? I know, Derek, at one point you wanted to talk about how to record yourself in the best way.
Yeah, I just want just a little plug on YouTube. Currently, I am working on a series on improving your home practice studio for recording, because a lot of people are trying to do that right now. And my wife and I bought a new house in December, so I figured, hey, I want to improve the acoustics of my studio, so let's do it together. Everyone on YouTube. I'm putting a lot of work into this just because there are no real good resources on acoustics for a French horn. Just because our bell points backwards and you don't hear the direct sound, that means you throw out a lot of the common knowledge as far as what to do, how to treat a room, things like that right from the get-go. So we're just going to be talking about topics like that and just a way of thinking about acoustics for French horn, and hopefully, produce some good recordings in the process.
So important right now too, since that's what we're all doing.
Yeah,
making recordings at home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guys, I think we should probably wrap this up. And we are incredibly grateful that you joined us today, and we're very sad that it didn't work out in terms of the being live from the beginning. But we will definitely be posting this very soon. So check Houghton Horns on Facebook, or the Met Opera Horns page on Facebook as well. This has been really interesting to all of us. And again, just thank you so much for spending the early part of your day with us. We really appreciate this.